Every experience that we have is processed in one place, the nervous system. And for this reason alone, it is key to work with it. Welcome to Nervous System Reset. Today we are asking the question of, why even work with the nervous system? What's the point? Well, I want to start by asking you a question first. And that question is this: how do you identify yourself? I feel like we very quickly understand that we're not any of these identifications, these labels that we might have from society. And at the same time, when I look in the mirror and I see my physical body, I also feel that there's much more to me than this. I don't believe personally that I'm just some biomechanical automaton who is following the instructions of some chemicals that are flowing through my blood. That for me doesn't fit. I feel that there's more to me than that. So then if I go deeper, do I identify myself with the mind? Do I identify myself with the thoughts, with the brain? And to that, I need to share that modern science is showing that the brain is just one nervous plexus in the body, in a body that has multiple nervous plexi. And in fact, there's more information going from the nervous plexi in the body up to the brain, telling it what to do, than the brain sends down to the body, instructing the body how to act. So this idea that the brain is the center of our being is much more questionable than it used to be. And for me, it also doesn't fit. What's important for me to understand is that every single experience and action I take is processed through one central structure. And that structure is the nervous system. And what I mean by that is that every sense perception that I have, even if I think about it, and even if it comes through the sense organs, so for example, I see through my eyes, I hear through my ears, I taste through my tongue, I smell from my nose, and I feel from my skin, these sensations are processed through the intermediary of the nervous system. And every action that I take, whether it's, biting that thing that smells so good or any other action, is once again going to be processed by the nervous system. There's even things which don't reach the brain at all. There's nervous impulses that I will experience through the nervous system without going to the brain. And then the nervous system will send a response, an instruction. For example, if I touch a hot stove, the nervous signal doesn't travel all the way to my brain, and I think to myself, that is quite hot. I should definitely remove my hand from that. No, the moment I touch the hot stove, the nervous system itself receives the message, the hand is in danger. And it sends back the instruction, remove your hand. So we can see from this that, in fact, the nervous system, not the brain and not the body, is a much more accurate representation of the center of our experience and the center of our being. But still, this doesn't answer the question of why work with the nervous system. You might be saying, okay, Ryan, I understand. I am my nervous system. I can identify as my nervous system. But why do I need to work with it? What's wrong with my nervous system? Or what needs attention with my nervous system? And to that, I'll ask a few more questions. The first one being, have you ever caught yourself feeling a certain way that didn't fit the context that you are existing in? The current experience that you are having? Have you ever felt yourself incongruent with what's happening around you? And feeling, normally when it's feelings like this, it's feelings that are not so pleasant. I know that this was a big one for me. I used to have very, very powerful social anxiety. And so anytime that I was in an environment where there was lots of people, the anxiety was so much that I just couldn't handle it. To the point that I almost dropped out of my master's degree in university because I couldn't go to the lectures anymore. Being in the lecture theater with people around me was so agitating to my nervous system that I began to be totally overwhelmed. I even feel a little overwhelmed just recalling that feeling. It was so intense. And it wasn't until much later that I learned that this was a nervous system response. There was nothing for me to really be afraid of. There was nothing for me to be anxious about. It was just overwhelm in the nervous system. Have you ever had a situation where you have thoughts that you don't want to have, that aren't appropriate to your situation, and often these thoughts end up on a certain loop, going around and around in circles when we can't actually do anything about the thing that we're thinking about? This was a big one for me as well, especially if somebody had annoyed me or irritated me. I would start to have these constant looping thoughts about how, that was unfair. Why did they do that? I'm going to say this to them. I'm going to say that to them. They need to learn their lesson. These kinds of things, just over and over again, even if that person was nowhere near. Even if I'd probably never see them again, I would get stuck in these thoughts. Finally, I want to ask if you've ever had a situation where you feel you act in a way that isn't congruent, isn't consistent with the person that you want to be or the person that you see yourself as. Now, these reactions, these, actions that are outside of the way that we consciously want to be can show up in a number of different ways, depending on our main sympathetic response, which we'll talk about in another video. For me, I'm very prone to the fight response. So anything that happens, I have a tendency to want to fight about it, to want to fight over it. I used to have a very short temper. And it was so intense to the point that even something happening that's not related to my current situation could send me into this fight response. For example, I might be speaking to somebody and a door can slam in the next room. And this would jolt my nervous system so that I'm getting angry and aggressive with the person that I'm speaking to. Not only is a door not a good reason, a door slamming not a good reason to have this kind of response, but this person had nothing to do with the door slamming. It was purely a reactive response. Other people might be more prone to a flight response. A situation might get too intense and they have the desire to leave that situation. They can't stay in it. They're looking for an escape. They're looking for a reason to leave, or they just shut down completely. Well, this is more if somebody has the freeze response. They might be in a situation where the nervous system is triggered and then they just cannot respond. And this can be very dangerous in emergency situations, or, for example, when using a vehicle, or it can even be very troubling in interpersonal relationships when it starts to get very triggering and the person needs to completely shut down. They can't speak anymore. They can't connect anymore. There's a few other responses, but I won't go too much into the details. We just leave it there for now. But all of these responses, these reactions, these thoughts, these feelings, these are very good signs of a nervous system that is in need of harmonization. As I mentioned before, science now shows that there's more information traveling from the body up to the brain than the brain sends down to the body. And so this idea that we used to have of the brain as this dictatorial autocrat or command center for everything that happens, everything we think and feel, is a little bit outdated and very likely not the case. If there's more information being sent from the body to the brain than the brain sends back, the brain is more controlled by what's happening in the nervous system of the body than the brain controls the nervous system of the body. And so if we're having these reactions, these thoughts, these feelings that we don't want to have, that are not useful for us and are not appropriate to our situation, then we need to look at the nervous system. When we start to work with the nervous system, we start to be able to address all of these factors. For example, when we work with the nervous system, we start to be able to make more space for our emotions, really feel our emotions, so that we can really process them and really let go of them. We're no longer stuck in emotions of experiences that we had in the past, whether that be a recent past or some childhood traumas or some traumas that happened later in life that we still haven't fully processed. We get the capacity to really feel the feelings, really experience them, but then to let them go, to make space for other feelings, feelings that we might find much more pleasant and beneficial. When we work with the nervous system, we also start to be able to work with the thoughts. We don't need to get stuck in these thought loops anymore. We can have a thought and then accept that thought and let it go. We don't end up going around and around in circles constantly. And this allows us to be more present with what's really in front of us and more focused on the things that are really important. We also, in later stages of working with the nervous system, might even find some spaciousness in the thoughts. Moments without thoughts, where we can just experience being fully present. When we work with the nervous system, we also work with our reactivity. We stop needing to react to things instantly. We get that inner space which allows us to process what's happening to us and then consciously choose the response that we have. We also will not have this tendency to freeze, to not know how to act, to want to run away. We'll be able to stay present in difficult situations, whether that's, physical difficulty of an emergency or the emotional difficulty of intimate exchanges that aren't always easy. We get this inner space. For me, the journey is still continuing. My nervous system, it needs a lot of work, and so I continue to work on it. But I've already made huge strides in this area. And what I have noticed is that the more that I work on my nervous system, the more capacity I have to be present to my current reality, to be calm even in stressful situations, to process that stress, and to feel more joy and more fulfillment. And so if you identified with any of the things that I was speaking about, and you'd like to develop these qualities, then I invite you to join me on this journey of working with the nervous system.